Hi guys, hope you're well. I've got a really kind of great guest today and someone that I really kind of can't wait to introduce you to, explain a bit more about our backstory, how we first kind of met, and then the whole point of the kind of growth strategy podcast and live stream. And as Matt, we were just talking about, yep, it is live. Nobody watches live at the moment, but I've got a plan. It's kind of working through, which we'll, I guess, from a techie point of view, we'll kind of talk about. And what I like to do is talk to real people who've got real stories to tell. They've got their own kind of business journey that people kind of relate to. And then again, I've found that that really helps other people going through their own journey, just kind of getting to meet someone new, find out challenges that they've kind of been through, and just kind of go on this journey together. So I'm not going to mess about today. I'm going to bring him straight in, and then basically we'll have a chat for however long it takes. And then just to explain to anyone, in case this does cut off, I had a power cut about half an hour ago. So if at some point it just dies, that could be why. So it's better to throw these things out just in case. So Matt, I'm just going to bring you in.
Hello there, getting our excuses in nice and early there, aren't we?
So Matt, do you want to say hi to everyone? Just kind of brief introduction, just if anyone doesn't know who you are.
Yeah, sure. So hello to everyone who's watching. For those who don't know me, I'm Matt McGough. I'm Managing Director of Ithica Films, and we're a bunch of filmmakers based out of the Tees Valley.
No, cool. I'm actually very jealous of your sound insulation panels on the back wall.
They're all for sure. They're all for sure.
Because when I started doing the live stream, I think it was after my second one, because you always have to tackle the biggest problems first. I was getting quite a lot of echo because I'm essentially in our office at home, which isn't a big room. And I was getting echo, so I've gone the old school Mike Skinner angle from when he recorded his first album. So I've got pillows that sit behind the camera, and actually it kind of works. It makes an improvement. But one day when I'm rich and famous like you, I might have my own studio with proper sound panels. And
yeah, well, we've got 4 of these, and yeah, like this one, me and both filmmakers were all like masked up, spraying the walls and sticking all of these up. So it's like, it looks the part, but it's because we have to do the physical work on it. So yeah, it's made a massive difference in here because it just went from being really cavernous and the sound bouncing around while trying to edit, just to this lovely, calming kind of Radio 4 type thing. So it's really interesting.
No,
get yourself some. Stop scrimping.
Well, I think it's more to do with what my wife will let me have. And as I mentioned at the start about the power cut, I'm fairly certain that she'll probably blame me for the power cut and all the lighting equipment and the stuff got on. And actually, just to warn yourself and also everyone else, I think we've got some bandwidth problems as well. So we'll battle on. It is what it is. And likewise, through the magic of editing, I found that if your picture ever buffers, if I just stay very still, I can edit the two together and nobody notices. So
don't be giving these tips away, like.
So just for people that kind of don't know who you are, would you like to tell people just about yourself and about the business?
Yeah, so let's start with the business first. Business is 6-year-old. We're filmmakers. We create through some of the work we've been doing. We do about 30 different types of films. So this is from like promo stuff right through to doing a lot of return to work steps at the minute, right through to social media type content. So we totally underestimated how much we did. Until we actually sat down and looked at it, and we were like, "Wow, actually, we do quite a lot here." But it's all done with this cinematic eye. And one of the big things about that is it's weird how you need to put yourself into that to be able to do it. It's not just something that you just set it up and it looks great. It's like you proper need to dig into every film that you do. And I mean, we did have a tally going, and that sort of lost its way a bit through all of this, but yeah, it was sitting at close to about 2,000 films that we've made.
Wow.
So it's a lot of work. I mean, I was sat here with like about 150 terabyte worth of stuff.
Yeah.
Just that here that we've done. So it's no mean feat, and there's a lot that goes into that. And I think that one of the big things that we've done as a business is it's the way that you can see it in the clients that we worked with, where we worked with them a few years ago, and yeah, they just want a video, or they just want something. They want something good, but they just the expectation wasn't there of like what it could be. And then as we're working with them through the years, the things that they feedback on and the things that they take enjoyment in, and it's things like the aesthetic of it, the framing of it, the story that you're telling, and things like that. It's people are a lot more engaged in the process and the result of filmmaking, and that's been really cool. So there's 8 of us, and we're based in Vauxhall 1 in Middlesbrough, which for those who don't know is like the digital centre of the universe in Middlesbrough.
No, so you do have a very cool office, which I am jealous of. I did actually look at office space for myself, but it's also that balance of one of the things that I kind of preach is all to do with low overheads. And actually for a solopreneur, it's that balance of where, yes, if I do things from home, I might get power cuts and overwhelm the 19th century kind of electrics in my house. But actually it saves me probably 15 grand a year. So it's, from a business point of view, it's you're so much further ahead before you actually start making money. And it's all these kind of things that, it's almost what's your minimum viable product. And for me, it was a case of, so before we came on air, we were talking about live streaming, and I was saying to Matt that actually when lockdown happened, it was something I wanted to learn. And actually just because it was something I thought I could learn, but actually truth be told, it was so much more difficult than I ever thought it would be. And again, because it's live, there's so many other nuances to it that I'm still trying to find my feet. But actually, although a lot of the world has gone online because of COVID-19, I can see how actually for the next 20, 50 years, because I'm only 36, so I've probably got at least 30 years left in my career, it's only going to go more and more in that direction. So the more that I could kind of learn my craft and or just, give it my best shot. And then what's been quite funny, actually, just kind of talking it through techie to kind of techie, is when you discover things like the bandwidth that you try and push through and your bit rate for your stream through OBS, and how much more complicated it gets when you put graphics and tickers on, and then sound echoes, and it gets exponentially harder. But actually, just from a sheer kind of someone that likes cameras kind of thing, I quite enjoy the challenge, but it's far from kind of easy.
Yeah, so if anyone's still with us who actually wanted to chat business stuff, that's you've learned like a whole new language there. But it's mad. Like it's really mad. I think you've touched on the thing, and I think we're starting to see people fatigue with it and stuff. But I see a lot of value in how people have adapted to it. That we don't have to do it for everything going forward. But I think having bits of it will be really nice. Where it is like, oh well, instead of having to travel an hour just to see somebody, it's like, well, if it's urgent, we can just do it like this, and then.
Because I've found that like just in the last 2 days, I've had morning calls with Saudi Arabia, and okay, you would have had to do that anyway, but it's the principle of now how easy it is, and actually it's quite useful. So for instance, I used to, if I was going up to Aberdeen to have meetings with people, I'd get in the car, I'd probably leave, because I leave super early, like 3 a.m, to get there for 9. I'd be at a show all day, see people do stuff, spend another day, then drive back. But that's 12 hours of lost time. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if you arrange the meeting, you do it like this, but actually you've saved everyone time and effort, and I can see it becoming more, prevalent. But anyway, so this kind of live stream is more about you, to be honest, than it is to me. But I like to go off topic and just talk through different things, because that's, what people do. So we first met at something called the Tees Valley Business Summit, and we were in the far corner of one of the buildings, because I was working at the LEP at the time, I believe. And it was just this guy called Matt who makes films turned up, and I think we probably, had 10 minutes or so, and then we kind of just, appeared to kind of stay around in the same kind of circles for a while. And then in various companies that I've worked in the past, I've either used Matt or wanted to and never got it signed off for different reasons. But actually, I always really appreciated it's a funny term because it's subjective, but it's the quality that you guys go through and you produce is very cinematic, that not many people can do that. And it's the balance again of where some people will class what I do as doing social media video, but what I do is like level 5 grade. But I know that, and I appreciate that, and I just do the best I can with the stuff I've got. You guys push it, right to the kind of top end. And it's, I think from a business strategy sales point of view, people now, I don't think anyone even questions whether video is the future. I think video is the most valuable tool you're going to have, just full stop. But then it's also combining that with storytelling. So before we go into the detail about some of that kind of stuff, because there's some videos that you've done over the years that I really kind of love. How did you get into filmmaking?
Yeah, it's a weird one. It has two strands to it. One when I was very young, and one when I was a young man with very little direction. So I went to Winniebank School, and we had a visit from, my dad told me it was Neil Kinnock, the Labour leader at the time, but I wasn't bothered about this. He was doing the politician thing, going table to table. However, there was a guy, big ENG news camera on his shoulder, and it just stuck in my head of like, oh, that's quite an interesting thing. But yeah, the other stuff that I wanted to do when I was a kid, be a pilot or all that type of thing. But there was always this fascination with cameras and stuff. My dad took photos. My dad had cine cameras, things like that. There's a picture of me with a little camera when I'm little, and it just sort of like sat there for quite a while. And then I was 19, and I'd really lost my direction. I'd dropped out of college. I'd had a year out working full time at my job at the time in the kitchen, and I went back to college, and it was like, well, pick something that looks good rather than what everyone else is doing. And there was like, it makes perfect sense now being sat here of what I picked, which was media studies, English language and literature, and business studies. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of like, oh, well, you must have had the foundations for that. I was awful at business studies. I couldn't have the context for it and stuff. But I had the context for all of the writing and all of the analysing and making films. So all of a sudden you're talking about these very basic film terms, mise en scène, framing, like narrative, things like that. And it just made sense to me. It just landed, and I understood it, and I understood it very quickly and very easily. And I got frustrated that the people on my course didn't quite get that. They were battling as if I was battling in business studies. So that was a bit of a strange one. So from there, I just did what instantly on a tiny little handy cam, and I managed to get one of the first IMAX, the coloured ones.
Yeah, I remember.
College, because I was one of the older students. They trusted me. I don't know whether they should have done, but they trusted me to have this for the summer, and so I was learning Final Cut Pro, and I was interviewing people like my mates ran club nights, so I was interviewing like Tom Hingley from Inspired Carpets and stuff like that, and there was always this thing about, oh, you've asked some really interesting questions there. So I was just getting the bug, really. And then I went and did a production degree at Teesside University. And again, sort of like just kept that going, where it was like getting involved with anything and everything and being a pain, and like always being outside my lecturer's door with questions and opinions. Opinions were the worst ones. So it's like, they knew that I was coming and that I had something to say. And then from there, really, it's like a really intense 2-year period where by the time I finished my second year, I'm working on stuff that the uni's bringing in commercially or non-commercially that they were doing. And I'm working on that. And then that put me into an opportunity for a job. So it's quite the whole thing will have happened in like maybe 4 years. Wow. From picking up like what is a consumer camera and just filming to you're working professionally.
Because I think what's quite interesting though, it's the balance and the transition from when you have a passion, whatever the passion is. Yours is obviously filmmaking. You discover it, and it's kind of just what you want to do all the time, and it's what you get your kicks off. And then how did you then transition that through to starting a business? So you said, did you go into a job first?
Yeah. So I went into a job up in Newcastle, and I was there for about 9 years, but I'd started as like a production assistant. I was only meant to be there for the summer. It was only like a summer job. But by the end of the first week, I was there full time, and like I'd I'd shown them things that they'd maybe missed, and not in a bad way. Like they knew what they were doing, and they were a decent company. But it was that thing of like, it was that fresh perspective and that energy, just to be like, oh well, what would have taken a day to have done, you've done in a couple of hours, or like you've got your head around these little bits, and yeah, it's like then you start making your mistakes and stuff. But you'd already sort of progressed to a point. And then by the time I go back to uni, I'm being sent off to China and Italy and Portugal. Wow. So I'm going to lecturers saying, well, I can't come in next week. And they're like, oh, you've got to come in and do your third year and you've got to do this. I'm like, yeah, but I can't. And like, so why can't you come in? I'm like, I've got to go to China to film for Axel Nobel. And they're like, yeah, we didn't hear this, that type of thing. I think enough times elapsed for this to go on. But then the other stuff like, it's like, oh, I can't come in, or why now? It's like, oh, because I'm working for Tyne Tees. We're doing a documentary, so I'm not going to be in. But and it's like they were quite supportive with that. That was cool, but it was like quite a steep learning curve. And the only thing looking back was that because of how steep that was, that allowed me to sort of really progress. But the mistakes that I made were pretty catastrophic because of the pace going at.
But I'll ask just because I think it will be interesting for other people who, basically they have a passion. They're looking to start something new. What kind of mistakes did you make? Were they technical video ones or just kind of businessy generalist ones? Or
mostly technical stuff, because I'm getting my chops and I'm getting used to working at a higher level every day. So there was a lot of stuff like I don't know, like your white balance and stuff like that, where it's not quite right. But the interesting thing about that is that I've got something that should have ended my career. That I'd shot something that was all blue, which for the people who don't know the difference of the balances, it's like it was set for outside when I was inside, and it just was awful. It was like it wasn't even in the middle where you could get away with it, so it just looked awful. And however, because I'd built up that much sort of trust, and all of a sudden they're ringing around saying, no, not the same, like it's completely opposite. The lad's screwed up. Can we dig him out? How can we dig him out? So it ends up that my footage goes off, gets color corrected, or as a favor, and comes back and no one says a thing. That type of thing. And it's like that taught me a lot of sort of like when people have your back. But then daft stuff like I started, because I was getting more involved in managing my productions and all this type of thing. At that point I wasn't doing any BD, but there was daft stuff where if I'd give somebody a price and it was just off what I'd heard or what I'd been told or whatever, and that was wrong, that there wasn't that. You'd get the flexibility on the technical side. There wasn't the flexibility when you're talking about money with somebody. Yeah. A key example, the first one I remember was that I'd give somebody the wrong mileage, that I'd give them what I get as an employee at that time, not what the company was putting out. And straight away it's like, oh yeah, I've done this. And it was like, yeah, you're not getting out of this. Like, you're getting paid what you'd quoted us, that type of thing. And I was like, well, it's fair dues, but for next time, that type of thing. And ultimately when it's a $5 or something like that, it's not a bad mistake to make. It's when if that had to be,
because it is true that you do you learn from your mistakes more than you do from the kind of good stuff. I remember once I was photographing a wedding, and it was down in Cheltenham. And what tends to happen is that you go to the hotel or the house where the bride's getting ready, do your shots. Then at some point you have to leave when she's about to come down the stairs. So you get the shots with the dad and you get all the romance and stuff. But then you have to race to the church to get there before she arrives. Mm-hmm. And it was always stressful and it was always a nightmare. But anyway, I remember once parking up, I get out of the car, I was holding 2 cameras at the time, Canons, and I've always kind of used Canons. And one was a big zoom lens, it was a 70-200. And I'm running to get to the church to get her before the car arrives. And basically this like £1,000 lens falls out the mount on the camera, hits the concrete. But obviously I'm in the middle of a wedding that's live and you can't pause it. So anyway, I get it back up, put it back on, carry on, shooting through the wedding. There's one point where I'd sit at the back and you'd aim down the aisle and you'd look to zoom in on stuff. And I just saw that the lens was like, whoop, And I was like, oh, I wanted to die. But what it did do, because I had loads of spare lenses, don't panic, just swap it out, put a 50mm f1.8 or something in, and you just shoot it in a different way. But it just proved, like, have backups or backups or backups, and if this goes wrong, don't panic, just do that. But it's almost when you learn your craft, you know, you often, it's important to fail, I think, at the start of your career. But anyway, enough of that. So
yeah, I think, sorry, I think it's the same with the business stuff though, where it is like, well, once you start scoping jobs out and you understand that just because somebody said it's this doesn't mean it's this, or maybe you've scoped it wrong, or like the job's been a lot bigger than first anticipated and stuff like that. That stuff's vital, and it's that thing of going, if you're going expecting that that's not going to happen, then I mean the quicker I sort of let go of wanting to control that and get everything right to that degree, the easier my life got.
What's quite funny actually for me, and actually almost nobody knows this story, but it was back in like 2010, 2011. So I'd set up my first photography company, and we used to do black tie balls and graduations and stuff. And basically graduations were our big earner. It was really busy all day, every day. You know, you get the gist of what they're kind of about. And at the time, I applied to go on The Apprentice, and basically I got through to like the third round or something, and I had to go to Birmingham for this, like the next set of kind of interviews. And the best thing that ever happened to me was not getting on it. But regardless, this was actually before it became the absolute farce of what it is now. But anyway, but what it did do was, two of the guys that worked for me, one was my brother, and the other one was a guy called Jess, who's now into his, or Jez, sorry, who's now into his photography as well, except he shoots with Sony's. But it allowed me to let go for the first time. And it was like, they know what they're doing, it's set up, everything's in place. And actually, although, you know, it was the first time I'd been able to, I'd always previously been in control of everything. And actually just to go, no, I trust you, boof. And then it was a big moment for me. But yet nobody knows that story, and likewise nobody knows about the Apprentice thing. But actually it was just, but for me that was the first time I was almost forced to let go, but it was almost one of the best things I ever did. And anyway, so you start the business. Would you like to describe almost your journey from, I guess, starting off to, have you got 6 people now, or did you say 8?
8.
So what was the kind of, you know, what was that journey like? How did you find it? How did you know when you had to recruit your first person? You know, all of those kind of, what was the journey like?
Yeah. So, like, the company that I was at, I realized I was getting towards 10 years there. And, like, I was a bit frustrated with where we were going and what my role was in all this. I wanted to do so many things. I could see what we could become, but I was really, really sort of baffled by it. And I don't know, at that point, I'd always struggled with the idea of doing something myself because it was something that other people did. But my wife planted the idea flat out and just said, what if you did it? Like, just challenged me. What if you did it? And then, yeah, about 6 weeks later, I've worked my notice and I'm working from home. So the starting it was the biggest culture shock that I've ever had in my life. To me, it messed with my system more than like having kids.
Wow.
And that change of your life, because all of a sudden then it's like everything's very real and everything's on you, and nobody's gonna do it for you, and like
there's no rescue boats coming, I think is the term.
I think if it's, and it also shows like that if it's successful, it's only successful like in this moment,
this
like
month,
tomorrow,
that 1 month. Yeah.
So it's kind of like it's liberating. It's really, really liberating, and it's one of the most exciting things I've ever done in my life. Like, we've talked at home about, could we've done it sooner? And we had, no, everything just went like that, and that was the moment that it had to happen.
I agree with that. It's almost in hindsight, it seems like it was serendipitous and it was always meant to happen. But actually, like, because we had a chat in the canteen before, you know, the front of your building, And when I was like at my crossroads and I was trying to decide what to do, and it was just at a certain point you have to think, sod it, I'm going to do it, I'm going to try it, because what's the worst that's going to happen? But I think that's also what people find interesting, because one of the things that used to annoy me, or it still does annoy me sometimes, it's when people only tell the perfect the perfect version of what happened, and we changed the world and we scaled and we did, but actually it's all it's when things go wrong, and just the honesty behind the journey. So how did you know when to recruit your first person and actually like build a team? Because for me, the responsibility to actually take on other people's livelihoods is it's a big emotional jump, and it's I really kind of applaud anyone that's kind of done it. So I'm just interested in that kind of process for you.
Yeah, sure. So like we went live in the May, and then by the October we were doing okay enough for Paul and my wife to join the business, because she'd been working in the background. So that was a big sort of like, oh, okay, so this is responsible for every penny that comes into our household. Okay. But by this point, we're hitting our peak season, which is like the run up to Christmas, like end of November. And I was working like from 5 a.m. till 2 in the next morning.
Wow.
And it was that thing of going, this is fine for now, but this isn't sustainable. And we did 2 things. The first was that we'd started working with an illustrator, and we were like, well, actually, this is something that like you can start planning and all the rest of it for the projects, and I can shoot them and cut them and everything else. Great. And we got them in like just really small steps, and we went like they were in for 2 days a week. And fortunately, because I was Teesside Uni alumni, I'd been in touch with them about the graduate programs and all this sort of stuff, and we'd had a bit of success the year before when I was at the old company, and I think he's still there. That the lad who we brought in as an apprentice or a graduate placement or something like that, like just came in and ran with it, and you were like, brilliant, this can work. So fortunately, we got a filmmaker, and it was just like, it was one of the toughest things ever. So we weren't responsible for paying them for those 3 months, but we were responsible for filming their day and for giving them tasks and for bringing them through. So it was a very strange time, because it was almost like, well, we've got a team now of 4, but in 6 months, we don't know if we're going to be able to keep supporting this or whatever. But it showed me that it's like, as people are filling those roles, that they do something they can do something really interesting, which is surprise you. And all of a sudden they start reflecting the company back to you, and like pretty much confirming what you think you've set up and what you think this company is, and that they start caring about the jobs that you bring in, or that you've had a good day, or that we've gone and shot some stuff that's really nice, or that someone's really happy with this film and things like that. So that was a really easy way of doing it, and I think it takes a lot of the stress off of when you're in that position. Whereas every hire subsequently hasn't had the same dilemmas around it. It's got those little, do we want to do this? Because, if we bring somebody in, then we're changing the dynamic of the team, and we're looking at how we manage this, and the amount of work that we've got to do, and what their skills are, and all this sort of like logical stuff. But the whole thing of like, well, do we want to be responsible for them has gone. Because we're quite comfortable with, well, this company does better the more people that are able to bring ideas to the table and contribute. So it's quite interesting to sit here now, 6 years in, and it's like we're looking at what we're going to do in the future and stuff. And it's like, if we need to hire a bunch of people, it doesn't faze me. So it's quite an interesting one. I think people grapple with it in different ways, but it's. I got told by Bill Scott, it was as ever. he told me that you'd only ever have enough work for half a person.
Okay.
And that crystallized it for me, where it was like, if you write it out and you do it yourself, then you'll sit there and go, I don't need them. But when you bring them in, they'll still only have that half to do, but you've got to then fill it with the other half. And that was quite a pertinent thing, where it was kind of like, you're not expecting, okay, well, I need to have doubled the amount of work that we're doing to justify somebody coming in.
I'm with you. Because it's all that balance of almost what I said before, is that it's funny, when people set up businesses, they generally have an idea about what they want to achieve. And actually for me, it's, we want to pay off the mortgage, I want to travel, I want to do all this kind of fun stuff. But actually, I don't need to employ someone else. And, there's still certain things that I hope to be able to scale and do. But with the idea being that actually, if I choose to in 4 years' time to sit on a beach 20 days a month, I can, as opposed to having to grind the business development wheel to grow the machine just to feed the same beast. So I'm almost doing it as a conscious decision, just to pick and choose companies and stuff that I want to work with, because I actually want to do this. This is my, summer project. And, as you said about the camera and stuff. But I love getting the advice from yourself and via, I guess, Bill, just because, I imagine once the dam is broken and you've taken on your first person, and also, you've got things like your finance and you know how to pay someone. It's like, I only set up my QuickBooks the other day. It was a big, thing for me. I applied to register for VAT, and it was all of these things that they're all milestones that it takes time, but then you get comfortable. But the big thing for me is almost just from, I guess, a realistic stroke pessimistic point of view, is just, it's still about survival all the time. I'm probably always going to have that mindset. But, it is what it is. So within the kind of interviews and stuff, I always like to get to know the person a bit more as well. So is it correct? but the thing is, like, when I posted on LinkedIn before about how we were going to have this chat, it's funny that people pop up. So although I said to Nina I won't ask you about waistcoats, but what I will ask you about is almost is it true you used to be in a band?
Waistcoats, man. Yeah.
Would you like to tell people about it?
Yeah, of course. I've played music properly since I was about 13, and had a couple of bands locally. One was the Gares, which was dirty blues, like Captain Beefheart, Black Keys type thing. And then the other one was a band called Capitan, which was very like Mogwai, Joy Division, bleak type stuff. But like we got to play like the big festivals around here, and we got to record and things like that. So it's quite I'm not in any hurry to do a band at the minute. Like the thought of it just brings me out in hives and this type of thing.
What almost got me was that it shows that you obviously have different elements of creativity, sat there in you. And what I was almost interested is in, like, where do you feel like you get your creativity from? Because for me, for instance, that when I was unhappy at different times in my life, I almost found that a lot of my creativity stopped. And the way that I express a lot of the stuff I do is in this kind of stuff, just because if I enjoy it, I'm happy to put myself out there. But actually when I wasn't, I found that affected me. But actually music's a big one for me, that I like to listen to different things and get a vibe off it and whatever. But then just from a fellow creative, although you're a proper one, I'm a fake one. Like, where do you get your inspiration and stuff from?
It's weird, like it's a quite an interesting question, that. And it's something that I'm working on kind of releasing myself from, because a lot of the stuff, whether it's music, whether it's been this business, whether it's been filmmaking as a craft, it's all come from like a fire, like a beast. And it's like, I'm starting to realize now that I always thought that I needed that to drive all of this stuff. And you go, well, no, there's little things that you do, but it is more like, it's probably coming from the same place, but it is a bit more of a soulful thing rather than an anger thing. And I think I'm naturally sort of like, well, a pain in the ass really to people. So I'm inquisitive and I want to know how things work, and I do this, that, and the other. But like, I got my guitars out of storage when we moved before Christmas. So over the past few months, I've not spent any great time on it, but I've just picked it up because it's behind me and all the rest of it at home. I'll just play a little bit. And what I've realised is that because I don't play other people's songs and stuff in the same way that we don't make other people's films, which is that because it's mine and because it's quite a genuine thing, like you just find these little niches that you're interested in, and you go, that's where you are, and that's where like the songs that we wrote and the films that we've made have come from, where it's like it's very much like you're channeling something. And I think it's been one of the highlights from working from home through this time has been actually that reconnection with that, and to go, yeah, this is something that's tangible, and this is something that's very me. And my wife's a musician, and I can see it with her because she's going through a very similar process, but she's a lot more accomplished than I am, whereas I'm very sort of like, I don't know, nomadic with it. She is a proper grades and all, voice, everything, whereas I'm just like, yeah, turn the distortion up and but yeah, I think it's that thing of like I get quite bored, and what the greatest thing about Ithica has been the sort of lifting what I do with a guitar or with a camera, but putting it into like business development and business strategy, so that excites me in the same sorts of ways.
I'm with you.
Which I think has allowed me to sort of bring more people in.
Because one of the things I almost realised recently was that it was on the weekend, so I was talking to my wife, as you do, and we were talking about things that you do in your spare time. So she likes to read books and do different things, but a lot of them are, I guess, fiction books. And it's almost where obviously her parents are retired, as are mine. But at a certain point, in theory, you can do whatever you want. But almost for me, because I actually enjoy doing this and learning all different things. And just for instance, the live stream has gone off and it's gone off again, but it still records. So it is what it is. This is all part of the learning curve. It does still record on my machine, by the way. But actually, it's almost like I've started a Netflix series that doesn't end, and I'm the main character. But I can explore this as long as I want, and do all the fun stuff, just because I actually enjoy it. So every time I do something as a social media post, or I try and create a new part of my website or whatever, for me it's almost like writing the next chapter of my book, writing the next thing that actually it's doing it because I enjoy it. So it's almost, if in the music example, just trying to learn a new chord or whatever, I just happen to apply it to what pays my bills. But I'm always just fascinated what other people kind of do and that kind of thing. Can we talk about social media for a second?
Yeah. Go for it.
So one of the chats that we've had in the past is always to do with, for one, the way that people promote themselves and businesses promote themselves, and also the impact from others. And it's almost where I think if you don't mind me saying, in the past, you've had comments about some of the social media where you might have decided to swear or not swear or different things. And it's almost, what's your take on social media, and how do you approach it?
I approach it very differently now. I've got a couple of, I like having a platform where I can just say what I want. And if people get upset, they get upset. But we don't use Facebook anymore, things like that. I've really grown tired of that. I'm really into Twitter. I think there's a lot of negative stuff on it, but there's some real positive stuff. And like, I'm well into Scottish football, so like, that's a ripe little community that's going on there, because it's all about just patter constantly, and that's great. In terms of my use of it outside of posting nonsense about Celtic, I think it's that thing of, I'm really uncomfortable with it. At the minute, I think there's too much noise and distraction, and there's not enough believability around it. Like everything's great. Like you're saying there, like you want to know the real stories of these hardships and stuff. Everything's great and everything's the best thing ever. And like people post because they feel like they should,
Mm-hmm.
rather than like from an outside force, rather than going, I've got something to say, I want to say it. It's like, oh well, yeah, I need to post today, otherwise, like I've not done my job.
Because one of the things I was going to say is that with any brand or company or person or whatever, you just want it to be authentic. So since I've like had this like almost marinade in a way, is that I think you should say how you speak, you should say what you feel, you should talk about different things, and actually just be authentic to you, whatever you is. Because again, on a kind of like Bell distribution curve, you're going to have people that really love what you do, they buy into it, they love that you're from Middlesbrough and you do this, and this. And then at the opposite end, you're going to have people that don't feel that way. But actually, that's okay. Because, for instance, for myself with the business, my dream is to try and get to 9 customers. Although actually, depending on the deal, is maybe to get to 5. But, regular sustained customers. So out of the 17,000 people I've got on LinkedIn, I only need 5. And it's that I would prefer to be genuinely me and have some people hate me, but actually some people you get on really well. But it's authentic, than try and please everyone all the time. And I think you do that very well. But I remember the conversation we had, it was at the NOF offshore wind conference at the Eagles. And that was when you said to me about the swearing and the comment, and it played on my mind.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And bizarrely, it was an issue that didn't come up, because for those who are maybe a bit unaware of me and my potty mouth, yeah, I like creative swearing. Like it's one of the main reasons I love the thick of it, and like Death of Stalin and content like that. But like this is what happens when somebody gets into like maybe it's a private network, and it's like, oh well, you're always doing this, and it's like, yeah, you've seen this, but that's not being seen by the outside world. Because I just like funny stuff. I like memes and things like that. But like my interests are pretty much the same as an 18-year-old boy, that type of thing. Yeah, like I've really lost a lot of faith, because I was an early adopter of the internet. I've loved it, I've hated it, I've loved it again. At the minute, this influencer driven stuff and the desire to be an influencer.
But I think that's now gone. I think the influencer thing was 2019. I think it's dead now, because, and other people will disagree, but almost because we've had a very serious global thing happened, I think a lot of the show and tell that was built up over 14 years or whatever it was, of in theory positive economy, nothing bad happened, etc. I think a lot of that will actually disappear, and you'll get a lot more local, high street, authentic stuff, whatever that means. And I think that will start to shine through. But that's just my kind of personal take on it. Sorry.
Yeah. If there's some logic in that, but I think we're going to see a big hangover from it. I think it'll dissipate over time, but it won't be right, it's gone. Which frustrates the hell out of me, because it's just, you see people doing it and it's the desire just to go like, oh, sometimes it's based on nothing, but even then it's like, I've run a business for 6 years. That doesn't give me like carte blanche to tell other people, so I can tell them my story any day of the week. I'm happy to do that. But it's this idea that like I could be like
a Gary Vee type person.
Yeah, like I'm not that guy, or that I should be non-execing as well as doing this. It's like, no, my focus is this and this only.
I've got a question for you, and it relates to exactly what you just said. So it's dealing with criticism. And for instance, so I woke up this morning, checked my inbox, 7 o'clock in the morning, bing, you've had a 2-star review on TripAdvisor, whatever it was. I've even forgot what I've called. It's not TripAdvisor, Trustpilot.
Yeah.
And anyway, and the guy, and I went back to a very nice message, because genuinely I was thanking him for his response, because it was on a free book, so it's, I'm not going to take it too personally. And his comment was that The graphics were great. It was a mixture between personal anecdotes and business strategy, but actually he just wanted the strategy bit and he thought it was overhyped and he was a bit disappointed. And I was like, okay, well, fair enough. But it was just, that's what I woke up to. And actually, I took the criticism on board, wrote back to him, whatever. But it's almost that a balance of whenever you choose to put yourself out there, and as you do with your kind of films and stuff, it's almost, have you learned to deal with negativity?
We get a lot of it. Yeah. If you can imagine working in a field so subjective,
yeah,
that without an inkling of anything, it's like you're asked to process very weird comments anyway. Can we make it more, I don't know,
moody?
Like some of the stuff, like it's always like just weird stuff, man. They're all fighting for attention in there at the minute. But like some of the abstract things that people go like, oh, can we just make it a bit more oomph? And you're like, well, what? In the real world, what does oomph mean? Oomph to me means like boom, massive explosion of energy and all this sort of stuff. Oomph to you might just mean, oh yeah, can we just turn the volume up a bit?
Yeah.
And we've done it in the past where we overreact to stuff and things like that. So in terms of criticism, like, because we get it a lot, we get a lot of opportunities to deal with it. And it's not necessarily, oh, we've done something wrong. It's just that when you work in collaboratively with people, and we're so open about this, that we don't make the film to 100%. We get it to maybe 90, but the person who's commissioned that, we rely on them to fill in this other 10, and we need to bounce off each other to make that happen. So you can't do that if you're not afraid to go.
Yeah. Because it's the whole I forgot what the quote is. I've been terrible lately about remembering quotes. It's the whole man in the arena quote of where you've got to give credit to someone that's willing to step on the pitch, to use a Borough example, versus the guy in the crowd telling him he's crap at what he does. But actually, almost with age, I now took it relatively positively, as where a few years ago that actually would have really kind of wound me up. But it was just because we were having a chat. I thought it was a good creative kind of question.
There's two little bits on it. I'll be dead quick.
That's okay.
One is the Gary Vee thing. He always goes on about it's not when a boxer punches, it's when a boxer gets punched. And it's like, what's the reaction to that? Do they go down and stay down, or do they get up and that spurs them on? And the thing is that I'm a lot happier in myself the less I care about what other people think of me and my thoughts and my ideas and everything else. It's not necessarily well, I know best, so see you later. It's more like, we can work together, but I don't have to like curtail to every single bit. I can't change who I am just to please.
One of my former guests, Chris, was talking about how it's the intent of the person. So although I might not have delivered the perfect result, I intended to do my very best of what it was, and almost that in itself is what gets me off the hook. So if I half-arsed something and the end product was poor, I would feel bad and I'd hate it. But actually, if I do my best based on what I can at the time, I'll take it. That's almost. So back to the questions and conscious of time and stuff.
I was going to say, it's we've talked about it.
No, don't worry. So in the viewpoint of a professional filmmaker, what is it that you love about film, and what makes a good storyteller?
Okay. In terms of it as a format, it pulls together so many different elements. So if you're a musician, you're pulling together sound and feeling. If you are a filmmaker, that's an element of it, but then you've got the visual of it. So if you're a photographer, then you're looking for light and meaning and things like that. Whereas we're pulling together these things together. So to be a great filmmaker, you've got to think about this entire spectrum. What does it feel like? What does it sound like? What does it look like? How does this invoke a reaction to somebody and things like that? You've almost got to grapple with it a little bit. And so for me, it's people who can understand the aesthetics of each of those elements. So somebody who understands it, how to describe a sound, like and what that feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Same with like the composition's a great one. It's something we've been working on internally, where it's kind of like when you film people, like how you portray them in the frame tells you whether they should be powerful, whether they're not, whether they're at ease or not, and things like this. And it's like kind of how you want the audience to feel. So we're trying to do a lot of work on, well, how do we get something that's quite neutral but also very powerful? So you're always dealing with these often polar opposites, where you've got to find that bit in the middle where you go, if it's a documentary, say, we want it to be like relaxed and informative, but at the same time we've got to get it so that it has a feeling to it, that it is interesting as an image. It's not just like, oh well, we could, otherwise we might as well just come down with a handy cam and just stick it in someone's face.
Because I think that it's also doing that to a client brief, which is also subjective. It's a very difficult task. And actually, one of the videos which I think, well, I say it's one of my favourites, was the Darlington Building Society one. I think it was telling the stories of the town.
Oh, this is interesting. Newcastle Building Society, but it was in Darlington.
Well, there you go. But I remember the Darlington bit. But it was just, for me, it ticked all the boxes. And I know that you do quite a bit of kind of corporate work, and you don't have to mention who the clients are, but again, from the kind of engineering, offshore energy kind of background, the ability to tell a story in terms of a product and the service is, massive. That video again tells so much. But I guess we'll save that for another day. So in terms of your kind of favorite filmmakers, who do you kind of look up to, and almost why? Because I watch movies, I like storytelling, but you'll see it in a completely different way to how I do. So almost for someone that's uninitiated, what makes Stanley Kubrick good, or whoever? Because I know that your different sound booths or editing booths have got different names as well. And it was just, I'd love to hear your viewpoint on, what makes a great filmmaker and why.
Yeah, the guys I look up to really are, and it's interesting at this stage of my life because it's not really changed, which is Stanley Kubrick and Christopher Nolan, which is, the big filmmakers. Yes, I'd love to list off a bunch of names that no one's ever heard of and all that type of thing. And there is other stuff that I watch, but those two do it for me because you're dealing with a lot of different and opposing pressures to get the thing made anyway. So the fact that when you delve into Stanley Kubrick's archives, you look at why he's filmed here instead of there, and the commercial decisions that drive that. He wasn't given a blank check to make 2001. He had to work within budgets and the rest of it, and to make money for him and the studio and for the people involved in it and things like that. So it's quite interesting, and especially like Chris Nolan's got his own company, Syncope. So it's kind of like it's looking at how the thing that I think is interesting for them, which I don't do, is that they would be directing on set. They've done all of this stuff to be able to do that. Whereas I'm doing all of this stuff and I'm having to then step back and let other people do it, and I'll do more of this stuff, which is really interesting. But the interesting bit of that is that my fingerprints are still all over it. But in terms of, the variety, you look at Nolan's films. You've got Outer Space. You've got what was it? How would you describe Inception? Kind of like. Like Dream Within a Dream.
Yeah.
Like
got the whole Dark Knight series.
Yeah, like, and even them, and then Memento with the narrative, and even something as straightforward as Dunkirk, where it's this whole playing with time within a historical setting. It's really fascinating to look at the variety of these films, and then Tenet that's coming out, where it's kind of like God, actually, I shouldn't have mentioned that because I'm looking myself really daft now. It's not time travel. It's like inversion, I think.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but
it comes out next month, and it's I've seen the trailers and it looks phenomenal, but it's like I've no idea what it is, and that's the best thing about films, when you don't know what you're going into. And then the same with Kubrick, where you go through Lolita, through Doctor Strangelove, right into Full Metal Jacket and Eyes Wide Shut, and everything in between. You go, it's not just, and that's something that I've really been inspired by. We don't just make engineering films. We don't just work with heavy engineering. We don't just work with financial services. We work with such a wide scope of, and it's being able to tell the story, whichever one you land in on that day. That's the real skill of a filmmaker, and it's something that I think the Tees Valley's got a lot to do, a lot of work to do on, where it's not just about making something great once, it's about being able to do it tomorrow, the next day, and the day after that.
What's your favourite film and why?
Oh, this is my common answer, because it's the one I always go back to. Sunshine by Danny Boyle.
Okay.
Real sort of classic Danny Boyle, in that it's set in space. The Earth's dying because the sun's needs kick up the bum, so they're going to deliver a nuclear payload. So it's sort of like, it sets off with quite an interesting, we're going out to space, we're going to do a job, and then it all goes haywire in the most Danny Boyle way ever. And I remember I was sat on a job in Coventry, and I forced myself to leave my hotel and go to the cinema, because it just felt awful. And I remember sitting there, and it was like an epiphany, watching this film and feeling the visuals and the storytelling and every beat of the drama that goes in there. And Cillian Murphy's in it as well, he's just a phenomenal actor. I could watch him all day long.
Cool. So just as we kind of begin to wrap up, there's the two questions that I ask everyone. And basically the first one, I think this actually a lot of people take a lot of value in, and it has its own section on my YouTube kind of channel. But for you, what's the best piece of advice you ever had?
Yeah. It was a question. It was, why are you sprinting when you're running a marathon?
Would you like to give some context and talk around it, or you can leave it at that? It's
yeah, the tiny bit of context that I'd give, because I like these things to be open to interpretation for people, but it's that thing of, if you're playing such a long game, why are you trying to do what you're going to do there? Yeah. Like, it's about being patient and about pacing yourself there's no point setting up a business and burning yourself out in 6 weeks. It's about being able to adapt and go, actually, yeah, I'm building up my stamina here because I've only just set off. And it's something that we call on a lot, in that, yeah, everyone wants to be further ahead than they are, and everyone wants to get to the next level and things like that. But it's that thing of going, the signs are that we're going in the right direction. Let's not try and sprint, because if we're halfway through the race and we try and sprint here, we're not going to get to the end here. We're gonna collapse.
I think that's a really good one, because often, even from your support bodies in the region, they all want you to be at X level in 2 years' time and 20% growth and whatever. And almost that's what a lot of people champion and push for. But actually, you are completely correct. It's almost just knowing where you're at. And the running is a great example, because if you're on a 400-meter race and you start sprinting flat out at 100 meters, you're never going to make the finish. Or you are, but you're going to die off.
Yeah.
I like that. I'm going to use that. I think that's one that I'm going to process it, and almost, because I think sometimes you do put pressure on yourself to achieve this by then, and actually you don't need to. You can find your feet and just grow and evolve. And
and it's something that I'm still battling with. It's not like, I don't think you ever get over it, because you always get that eagerness and excitement to go, oh well, if we just do this, and you're like, but then when you get into it and you go, actually put it against this, yeah, we'll do it, but we'll do it at that point, but at least we've done the work on it, so it's not gone to waste. We'll just do it later. I
think it's a good shout. And one of the other questions that I ask is, if you were to give advice to your younger self, and you can pick whichever age you want, any period in your life, anything, what would it be and why?
it echoes a point we made earlier about not caring about what other people think, or not letting what other people think affect you, which is just to trust. I'd want to trust myself more sooner, because the second that I did that, the noise just outside just dissipated and went down, and it got really quiet in my head, which allowed me to focus on what I was about, what I could do, and rather than what other people's expectations of me were, or what like I should be doing. Because if you go on what you should be doing, then no one would ever do anything.
Yeah.
But if I could say, like, the young lad, I think about him quite a lot through this this lockdown, who went back to college and all this type of thing. It's that thing of going, it's going to be all right. It's going to be okay. It's going to be tiring. It's going to be exhausting, and you're going to be a very different person because of the things that you're going to have to do. But if you can trust what you're doing, like you already kind of are, because you've made a decision to which was pretty embarrassing, to go back to college. It was like, I've screwed up for 3 years and I'm going to go and do it again.
It's not embarrassing.
But I've got to get it right. A what?
I'm saying you might have felt that at the time, but now in hindsight, it's not embarrassing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because
the thing.
It's almost, a lot of those times, like imagine how much kind of guts it took to be the person to then choose to go back. It takes balls to even, the easy option would have been to not do it. So if anything, it showed good kind of character traits in that, early doors, that it's, but no, I think, just not being so hard on yourself and just do what you want is the kind of truth of it. Just make yourself happy.
Yeah, my big thing at the minute is that just like life's too short to get hung up on nonsense, really. Like, I'm already seeing now as my kids are growing up and things like that, where you're going up, this period of time's gone, and you're like, well, it reflects back on your life and reading about this or that. Like, doesn't matter.
So as we kind of wrap up, if you have a chance to, have you got anything going on that you want to plug or talk about or that kind of thing?
Yeah, let's talk about something that's coming out next week. So if anyone's interested, jump on Twitter and Instagram, LinkedIn. It's just at Ithica Films. That's usually all I ask of people, just to sort of join the gang. But we've got something coming out next week, which is a return piece, and we've done it with a client, and it's one of the best things we've ever made.
Wow.
And it's incredibly pertinent for the time we're in now. And in all honesty, like I said, my fingerprints are all over the films that we make, but that's all it is. It's got my fingerprints on it. I had a very light role in it, sort of sent it off a bit at the end. And the beauty of it for me is how my team, and one person in particular, was able to take that nugget of an idea and turn it into something really quite profound. And it's being able to take enjoyment in what other people have achieved. That for me is gold at the minute.
Will it be blatantly obvious when it launches, or will we have to search for it?
Incredibly blatantly obvious when it launches.
Now, honestly, I look forward to it, and because part of the reason why I wanted to have the chat is almost just because we're mates, we've known each other for a while, but because I do this for free because I enjoy it, and it's nice to catch up with people that we can't meet in person and grab a coffee and a millionaire shortbread or whatever it was that was massively unhealthy from your cafe. But it's but for me this is nice, and again, the fact that our conversations are recorded means that in 50 years time, when I'm on my deathbed, I can look back and, do you remember that guy, or Matt went on to be the next Kubrick or whatever. But it's more just, I do because I enjoy it. But I do genuinely think, and I always have done, that for what you guys do, you are the best in the region by far. I can't comment because I don't know anyone else, outside the kind of area.
Oh, well, backhanded compliment, wasn't it?
I'm not going to give you it all. But my point is, but what you do is very, very good. I've seen it time and time and again. You do a lot of stuff, good stuff for the region as well. And it's great just to see like local people doing really good stuff that hopefully gets kind of recognised internationally, and I know what you do kind of goes around the world.
Yeah.
And it's been great to kind of catch up. It's been great to hear more of your story. It's been a shame about our internet connections dropped out a few times, but with some clever editing, people will hardly kind of notice.
Yeah, I'll leave that to you though.
No, don't worry. Cool, but no, thank you for your time. Stay safe in lockdown. Hopefully we'll get a chance to kind of catch up in person at some point soon. And I look forward to next week.
Yeah, brilliant. Take care, pal. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Cheers, Matt. Thanks.
Yeah. See you later.